Sophia, a stepmother, often found herself engulfed by loneliness. Her husband, James, was a determined entrepreneur wholly absorbed by his work. While she admired his drive, she yearned for small displays of affection, a touch, a glance, anything to make her feel seen. Over time, their marriage had settled into a predictable routine, void of passion. Sophia's days blurred together in their expansive home, accompanied only by silence and her thoughts. Everything shifted when her stepson, Liam, moved back in. At 25, Liam carried a vibrant energy, his confidence brightening every room he entered. Having recently returned from studying abroad, he exuded charm and sophistication. Sophia couldn't help but notice how his laughter revitalized the house, filling spaces that had long been quiet. One evening, after taking a shower, Sophia stood before her mirror, drying her hair. She reached back to unclasp her bra, letting it slip from her shoulders and tossing it onto the bed. For a moment, she gazed at her reflection, her bare chest rising and falling with a soft sigh. Wearing only her bottoms, she felt vulnerable, yet free in the privacy of her room. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Sophia spun around, instinctively covering herself. "Liam," she gasped, his face turned bright red as he quickly averted his gaze, though his eyes lingered a fraction too long. "I'm sorry," he stammered. "I thought you were downstairs." Her heart raced, a mix of embarrassment and something deeper she couldn't quite identify. "You need to knock," she said, her tone softer than she intended. "I'm sorry," Liam muttered again. "I'll go." But he didn't move. Instead, his eyes flicked back to hers, his expression torn between apology and something unspoken. "Liam," Sophia began, her voice gentler now. "It's fine. Just close the door, please." He obeyed, shutting the door behind him, but he lingered on the other side. "I didn't mean to walk in on you," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the floor. "But I can't stop thinking about you." Sophia froze. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. Liam stepped closer, his confidence returning. "I've always admired you," he admitted, "but now that I'm back, it's different. I see you, and I can't look away." Sophia's throat tightened, the air between them heavy with emotions left unsaid. "Liam, this is wrong," she whispered. "Then why does it feel so right?" he interrupted. Before she could respond, he was standing in front of her, his hand grazing her arm. The light touch sent a chill through her, and though she didn't move away, she felt her resolve start to crumble. "You're young. You don't understand what you're saying," she murmured, though her voice lacked conviction. "I know exactly what I'm saying," he countered. "You deserve to feel wanted and loved." His words melted the barriers she'd tried to maintain. When he leaned in, she didn't stop him. Their lips met in a tentative kiss that grew deeper as passion took hold. His hands rested on her waist, firm yet tender, as if afraid to break the spell. Sophia let herself get lost in the moment, wrapping her arms around his neck. For the first time in years, she felt alive, desired, cherished. When they finally broke apart, their breaths were unsteady. Liam, she whispered, her voice trembling, we shouldn't have done that. But we already have, he replied softly, resting his forehead against hers. Sophia closed her eyes, torn between the pull of her heart and the voice of reason. As Liam cupped her cheek gently, she knew this moment had changed everything. She stepped back, her arms crossing over her chest, as the weight of what had happened began to sink in. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out her thoughts. We can't, she said again, her voice barely audible, though neither of them believed it. This isn't right. Liam moved closer, his tone both soft and resolute. Tell me you didn't feel it, Sophia. Tell me you don't feel this between us. He took her hands, placing them gently on his chest, and leaned in to kiss her again. Sophia felt her resistance fading as they surrendered to the moment. Her hands moved to his waist, trembling with uncertainty, but driven by the intensity of their connection. Liam, this is complicated, she whispered. It doesn't have to be, he said, his voice firm but tender. He reached for her hand, his fingers brushing hers, sending a spark through her that she couldn't ignore. I don't care about the rules or what anyone thinks. I care about you. Sophia pulled her hand away, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. You don't understand what you're saying. This is dangerous, Liam, for both of us. Then let it be dangerous, he replied, urgency in his voice. I've never felt this way before, Sophia. I can't just ignore it. Her resolve wavered under the intensity of his gaze and his words. Turning away, she struggled to calm her racing heart. You need to leave, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Please, Liam. He hesitated, his jaw tightening as though debating whether to push further. Finally, he nodded, the pain in his eyes unmistakable. All right, he said softly, stepping toward the door. Before leaving, he glanced back at her, his eyes filled with longing. But this isn't over, Sophia. I know you feel it too. The door clicked shut, leaving Sophia alone with a storm of emotions swirling inside her. She sank onto the edge of her bed, burying her face in her hands. What had she done? The next few days passed in a blur of avoidance. Sophia threw herself into household chores and errands, finding any excuse to keep herself busy and stay away from Liam. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the memory of his touch, his words, and the spark he had ignited within her. Liam, however, wasn't the type to be ignored. Late one evening, as Sophia stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes, she heard his familiar footsteps behind her. I can't keep pretending everything is fine, he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Sophia set the dish down and turned to face him. Liam, we agreed. No, he interrupted, stepping closer. You agreed. I never did. Please don't make this harder than it already is, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I'm not trying to make it harder, he said, his tone softening. "I'm trying to make it real." Before she could object, he closed the distance between them, gently cupping her face in his hands. His lips brushed hers, tentative and seeking her permission. This time, Sophia didn't resist. She leaned in, her hands gripping his arms as the emotions they had both suppressed came flooding to the surface. The kiss deepened, filled with all the words they hadn't spoken. Liam's hands moved to her waist, pulling her closer. For the first time in years, Sophia felt truly wanted. When they finally parted, their foreheads rested together, their breaths uneven and hearts pounding. "We'll figure this out," Liam whispered, his voice full of determination. Together. Sophia closed her eyes, torn but unable to deny the powerful pull she felt toward him. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something more, something forbidden yet irresistible. In the days that followed, their interactions became a delicate dance. Every shared glance and fleeting touch between Sophia and Liam was charged with tension neither of them could ignore. Despite her initial resistance, the barriers Sophia had built around her heart began to crumble. One quiet evening, as the house settled into a tranquil silence, Liam found Sophia sitting alone on the porch swing. The warm summer air wrapped around them, the distant chirping of crickets the only sound. She looked up as he approached, her face glowing softly in the porch light. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice low so as not to disturb the calm night. She shook her head, patting the spot next to her. "Too much on my mind." Liam sat down beside her, the swing creaking under their combined weight. For a moment, they sat silently, the tension between them palpable. "I've been thinking about you," he said, finally breaking the quiet. Sophia turned to him, her lips parting in surprise. "Liam, let me finish," he interrupted gently, his eyes locking onto hers. "You're all I think about, Sophia. You've taken over my thoughts completely, and I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way." Her breath caught as she looked away, fixing her gaze on the dark horizon. "It's not that simple," she murmured. "It is," he insisted, his voice growing stronger. "We feel something real, something undeniable. Why fight it?" Sophia turned back to him, her eyes brimming with both longing and fear. "Because it's not just about us. There are consequences, Liam. People wouldn't understand." Liam reached for her hand, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. "I don't care what anyone else thinks. The only thing that matters to me is you." His words shattered the last of her defenses. The restraint she had clung to for so long dissolved, and she leaned forward, capturing his lips in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. Liam responded immediately, his hand sliding to the back of her neck to deepen the kiss. The energy between them crackled, a mix of long-restrained passion and raw emotion. The swing swayed gently as Liam pulled her closer, his other hand resting on her waist. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in the moment, the rest of the world fading into insignificance. When they finally pulled away, their foreheads rested together, their breaths mingling in the warm summer night. Sophia opened her eyes, her heart racing as she looked at him. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Good," Liam replied with a soft smile, "because I don't want to go back to pretending." Sophia let out an unsteady laugh, her emotions a whirlwind of happiness and doubt. "We're going to have to figure this out." "We will," he assured her, his hand still clasping hers. The night stretched on, and for the first time, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that perhaps their love could endure the trials ahead. As weeks turned into months, Sophia and Liam found themselves caught in an increasingly complicated web of emotions and secrecy. Their passion burned intensely, but the weight of their relationship's consequences cast a shadow over their happiness. One evening, after a deeply emotional conversation, Sophia made a choice. Sitting with Liam in her bedroom, she held his hands tightly in her own, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "We can't keep doing this, Liam," she said gently, her voice shaking. Liam's expression fell, the hope that had kept him going flickering like a candle about to go out. "Why? I thought we were building something real," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We were," she whispered, squeezing his hands tighter, "and it was beautiful. But it can't last. The world won't allow it." She took a trembling breath, her voice breaking as she added, "I love you, Liam. That's why I have to let you go." He shook his head, his own eyes glossy with tears. "Number, we can find a way. We can leave, start over somewhere new. I'll give you everything, Sophia. Just don't walk away from this." Her heart ached at his words, but deep down, she knew what had to be done. "You deserve more than a love built on secrecy and fear," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "You deserve a life where you don't have to look over your shoulder or wonder if what we have is right or wrong." Liam cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "You're the only thing that feels right. Without you, nothing else matters." Sophia leaned into his touch, committing the feel of his hands and the way his love made her come alive to memory. But even as she longed to stay, she knew their story had reached its conclusion. They shared one final kiss, pouring every bit of their love and longing into that moment. When they pulled apart, their foreheads rested together, both reluctant to let go. "I'll never forget you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "You'll always have a place in my heart," he replied, his tone heavy with emotion. Sophia stepped back, the space between them feeling like an insurmountable distance. Liam watched silently as she turned and walked away, her silhouette fading down the hallway. He didn't try to stop her. He understood this was her way of protecting them both, even though it meant breaking their hearts. Years later, Sophia sat in a bustling cafe, sipping her coffee as life moved on around her. Her world had changed, but the memories of her time with Liam remained. Bittersweet, yet treasured. She smiled softly, tracing her finger along the rim of her cup, the echoes of their love, a quiet reminder of what once was. Across the room, a familiar figure caught her attention. Liam. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, it was as though no time had passed. He smiled, his expression a blend of warmth and wistfulness. She returned the gesture, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy and melancholy. Neither moved to approach, but in that fleeting exchange, they both understood. Their love, though brief, had left a permanent mark on their souls, and sometimes that was enough.